Dr. Christopher West here, the Theology of the Body guy. We ran out of time in the last video when we were looking at that age-old question men and women ask, how far is too far? Check out part 1 of this series here. In this video, we're going to take a deeper look. Our goal in these videos is to unfold for you how our earthly bodies reveal heavenly mysteries. If you're new to this channel and you want to do a deep dive into what it means to be human, consider subscribing. Also, if you want to compel YouTube to proclaim John Paul II's Theology of the Body to as many people as possible, click that like button and they will have to. We spent a lot of time in part 1, again, check it out here, of this series, talking about the difference between ethic and ethos. Just as a refresher, an ethic is a rule, right? Jesus says, you've heard the ethic not to commit adultery, for example. But ethos refers to the inner desires of our hearts, what attracts us, what repulses us. When we reduce Christian morality to ethics over here, we have what John Paul II calls moral minimalism. And we're in danger of falling off the abyss into sin all the time because we ask questions like, how far is too far before I fall off, right? Well, if you're going right to that edge, chances are you're going to be falling off the cliff. Ethos, allowing God's grace into the inner movements of our hearts, to redirect our desires, to purify our sexual attractions and emotions. This leads to true freedom in loving as Christ loves. What we're after here is not just drawing a line on a blackboard and saying everything up here is okay, and once you cross this line, that's all a sin. We haven't really looked at discerning what's going on in our hearts when we leave it there. As always, if you want to do a deeper dive, check out my book, Good News About Sex and Marriage. The link is below to learn more. As I say here, discerning the inner movements of our hearts can be confusing and difficult. Because of our own fallenness, we will inevitably recognize elements of self-seeking mixed in with otherwise genuine desires of love. Remember, Jesus said the wheat and the weeds grow together in our lives. We can never claim we're entirely pure, right? This shouldn't stifle us. Rather, it should compel us on a further journey of allowing God's grace in there ever more deeply to transform our hearts, to show us the new depths of love that are possible. If God is love, then love is an infinite reality, which means, and this is one of my favorite teachings from John Paul II, he says, love never is. It is always only just becoming. What does he mean? You can never say, I've arrived at love. I know how to love. All we can say is, I'm growing. I'm learning more. I'm getting better at knowing what it means to love. And I'm able to recognize more readily when movements in my heart are not taking me in the direction of love. We get an ever clearer vision, in other words, of where the wheat is and where the weeds are. And we know how to foster the wheat, and we know how not to follow where the weeds want to take us. Such a person is learning how to love. And that person can show genuine expressions of affection without ulterior motives. Again, as I say here, such genuineness in expressions of affection, from the first gesture of a touch, holding hands, or even eye contact, for crying out loud, right? From that, the whole way to sexual intercourse in marriage, this is only possible in a genuine way as we surrender our whole selves as sexual beings, as men and women, as we've been saying, to the transforming love of Christ. And the more we do, as we do, whether it's just the touch of a hand, a gentle, tender kiss, or the orgasmic explosion of marital intercourse, those expressions of affection, as they correspond to genuine realities, they bring exquisite joy. I remember the first time I ever really kissed a woman. And by that, I mean what I was saying with my body really expressed genuinely the affection I wanted to share with my heart. This was the woman I married. And the first time I pressed my lips against her lips, just in a gentle, affectionate kiss, the truthfulness of it, the honesty of it, knowing that what I was saying with my body was the truth. I want to bless you. I want to affirm you. I want to tell you how good you are. I'm not trying to get something out of you. I'm not just experimenting with you or toying with you so that I can get some gratification for myself. It was an outward-oriented, I want to bless and affirm you kiss. And the joy that came with it was far more exquisite than any momentary fleeting pleasure I had when, as a teenager, I just knew how to use and manipulate people to get what I wanted. My brothers and sisters, there is so much more to loving than we tend to think. And oftentimes, if we're honest, what we call love, if we're really taking an honest look at it, amounts to little more than two people using each other. If we're honest in looking at our hearts, it's not that we don't need lines, but the line is properly drawn in the heart, and we feel instinctively when we're crossing that line of using the person rather than loving the person. But again, don't we still need lines? Sure we do. Let's take a look at some of them. One obvious example of a line not to cross for an unmarried couple is sexual intercourse. If an unmarried couple were to claim that they had made an honest and courageous assessment of their hearts, and they had come to the conclusion that they could engage in intercourse as a genuine expression of their relationship, they'd be fooling themselves. It's true that they could experience some elements of love in sexual intercourse. There always remains an echo of truth even in our disordered expressions of love. But it's not true that the act itself would be an act of love. In fact, it could not avoid being an act of use. Similarly, physical behaviors that aim to arouse the body in preparation for intercourse are not appropriate expressions of affection for unmarried people. When there is simply no moral possibility of consummated love, it is in fact unloving intentionally to arouse someone to the point of a craving for intercourse. If we have to talk about physical lines in order to keep our hearts honest, we can say this. If either the man or the woman is brought to the verge of climax, or has reached climax, or is aroused to the point of being tempted to masturbate, such a couple has crossed the line a long time before and is in need really of examining their hearts and their motives. In all of this, please keep in mind that we are not reducing the Christian life to a technical list of ethics or rules to follow. That again is moral minimalism. Rather, we are invited to open all of our desires, the good, the bad, the ugly, and to say, Christ, come in. Holy Spirit of God, come into my desires. Redirect them. Purify them. Teach me what it means to love in your image. Come and set me free with freedom from the law, which, as we said in part 1 of this video, is not freedom to break the law. It is freedom to fulfill the law because we no longer desire to break it. As I once heard it said, no one is so free as the person who sees what is true, good, and beautiful and desires it with all of his or her heart. That is the freedom for which Christ has set us free. And that is the freedom to which the Catholic Church invites us in all of her teachings about sexual morality. My brothers and sisters, I have so much more to share with you, and I do in the courses I teach for the Theology of the Body Institute. Check out the link below to learn more about our in-person and online courses. And if you want to experience ongoing formation in this beautiful vision, consider becoming part of our patron community. Until next time, may your eyes be open to who you really are.